I am almost a whole day old now. I arrived yesterday. That is, it seems to me. For if there was a day before yesterday, I would remember it. But perhaps there was a day before yesterday and I was just not paying attention. Very well. From here on out, I will pay very close attention and make note of it if any day before yesterday's happen. Something tells me that this will all be very important to the historian someday. For I feel like an experiment. I feel exactly like an experiment. No one has ever felt more like an experiment than I do. But am I the primary part of the experiment? The rest of it is part of it, that I'm sure. I'm the main part of it. But I think the rest of it has its share in the matter. Is my position assured, or do I have to take care of it? The latter, perhaps. Some instinct tells me that eternal vigilance is the price of supremacy. That is quite a good phrase for one so young, I think.
Everything looks better today than it did yesterday. In the rush of finishing up yesterday, the mountains were left in a ragged condition, and some of the plains were so littered with rubbish and remnants that the aspects were quite distressing. Noble, beautiful works of art should not be subjected to haste, and this marvelous new world is certainly a most noble and beautiful work, and marvelously near to perfect, the shortness of the time notwithstanding.
There are too many stars in some places, and not enough in others. No doubt that can be remedied at present. The moon got loose last night. It slid down and fell out the scheme. It was a very great loss. It breaks my heart to think of it. It should have been fastened better. If only we could get it back again, but of course there is no telling where it went to. And besides, whoever gets it will hide it. I know because I would do it myself. I believe I can be honest in a lot of things, but I already know that at the core of my being is a love for the beautiful, a passion for the beautiful, and therefore I could not be trusted with something as beautiful as the moon. If I found it in the daytime, I'm sure I could return it, because I would be afraid that somebody would come looking for it. But if I found it at night, I know I could not be trusted. For I do love moons. They are so beautiful and romantic. I wish we had 5 or 6 of them. I should never get tired of lying on the moss bank and looking up at them.
Cloudy today, wind in the east. I think we'll have rain. We? Where did I get that word? Oh, I remember now. The new creature used it.
I followed the other experiment around yesterday afternoon to see what it might be for. I could not make it out. I think it is a man. I had never seen a man, but it looked like one, and I feel sure that is what it is. I realize that I feel more curiosity about it than any of the other reptiles. It is a reptile, and I suppose it is, for it has frowsy hair and brown eyes and looks like a reptile. It has no hips, tapers like a carrot when it stands, and it spreads itself apart like a derrick, so I think it is a reptile. Ooh, though it may be architecture.
The new creature is a good deal in the way. It's always following me around and hanging about. I don't like this. I'm not used to company. I wish it would stay behind with the other animals.
At first I was afraid of it. Every time it would turn around, I thought it was going to chase me. But by and by, I decided that it was only trying to get away. So after that, I followed it along, about 20 yards back, which made it nervous and unhappy. So finally, it became so unhappy, it climbed a tree. I waited for a while for it to come down, but it didn't, so I gave up and went home. Today, the same thing over. I've got it up a tree again.
Been examining the great waterfall. It's the finest thing on the estate, I think. The new creature has named it Niagara Falls. Why? I'm sure I don't know. Oh, Says it looks like the thing. That's not a reason. It's mere waywardness and imbecility. I get no chance to name anything. The new creature comes along and names whatever it sees. Oh, there's the dodo, for instance. Says the moment one looks at it, one can see that it looks like a dodo. It'll have to keep that name, I guess. Wearies me to fret about it. It does no good anyway. Dodo. Looks no more like a dodo than I do.
It is up there yet. Resting, apparently. But that is subterfuge. Sunday isn't the day of rest. Saturday is appointed for that. All it seems to do is rest. It would tire me out to rest so much. It tires me out just to sit at the bottom of the tree and wait. I never see it do anything. I wonder what it is for.
Built me a shelter against the rain. Could not have it to myself in peace. The new creature intruded. When I tried to put it out, shed water out of the holes it looks with, and wiped it away with the back of its paws, and made a noise such as some of the other animals make when they're in distress. I wish it would not talk. It's always talking. That sounds like a cheap fling at the poor creature, a slur, but I don't mean it so. I've never heard the human voice before, and any new and strange sound intruding itself here upon the solemn hush of these dreaming solitudes offends my ear and seems a false note. And this new sound is so close to me. It's right at my shoulder, right at my ear, first on one side and then on the other. And I'm only used to sounds that are more or less distant from me.
They returned the moon last night, and I was so happy. It slid down and fell off again, but I was not worried. One does not have to worry when one has that kind of neighbor. I wish we could show our appreciation in some way and give them some stars, for we have far too many. We should say I, for the reptile cares nothing for such things.
The naming goes recklessly on. I had a perfect name for the estate. It was musical and pretty. Garden of Eden. Privately, I continue to call it that, but no longer publicly. The new creature says it's all rocks and scenery, and looks nothing like a garden. Says it looks like a park. It doesn't look like anything but a park. Therefore, without consulting me, it has been new named Niagara Falls Park. This is sufficiently high-handed, but already there's a sign up. Keep off the grass.
It has low tastes and is not kind. Earlier, I caught it trying to catch the speckled fishes in the pond, so I had to claw it on the back of the ear, and it climbed back up a tree to leave the fish alone. Hasn't it any heart? Doesn't it care or have any compassion for the little creatures? Could it be manufactured for such ungentle work? It certainly has the look of it. Earlier, when I clawed it on the side of the head, it used language. I had never heard speech before except my own. I did not understand the words, but it seemed expressive.
The new creature eats too much fruit. We're going to run short, most likely. We again. That is its word. Mine, too, now, from hearing it so frequently. Good deal of fog this morning. I don't go out in the fog myself. The new creature does. It goes out in all weathers, stumps right in there with its muddy feet, and talks. It used to be so pleasant and quiet here.
If it is a man, and it isn't a reptile, it wouldn't be it, would it? That wouldn't be grammatical. It would be he. Well, if it is a man, I will call it he. This will be handier than having so many uncertainties.
Pull through. This day is getting to be more and more trying. It was appointed as a day of rest last November. I had already had 6 of them per week before.
During the last day or two, I have taken all of the naming off of his hands, which has been a very great relief to him, for he has no talent in this area, and I have saved him many embarrassments. For I have no defect like this. The moment that I see an animal, I know what it is. He can't think of a name to save him. But when I see an animal, the way it moves, I just know what it is, as if it were an inspiration, for it was not there the moment before, and then it is. Take, for instance, the dodo. He thought it was a wild cat, but I saved him. I said in a quite pleasing tone, as if not conveying information at all, "Why, I do declare, there is the dodo." At first I thought he was a little piqued that I knew what it was and he didn't, but then I saw that he admired me. I thought about it much before going to bed, as it caused me much gratification. How good a thing can make us feel when we feel that we have earned it. This morning I told him my name, hoping it would interest him. He did not care for it. So strange. If he should tell me his name, I would care. I would think it more pleasant in my ears than any other sound.
New creature says its name is Eve. That's all right. I have no objections. I said it was superfluous then. That word evidently raised me in its respect. And indeed, it is a large, good word. It will bear repetition. Oh, the new creature says it's not an it, it's a she. This is probably doubtful, but it's nothing to me. What she is all the same to me. If she would just go off on her own and stop talking.
When I found out it could talk, I felt a whole new interest in it, for I love to talk. I could talk all the time, and even in my sleep. And I am very interesting. But if I had someone to talk to, I could be twice as interesting.
She engages herself in many foolish things. Among others, why the animals called lions and tigers feed off of grass and flowers, when, as she says it, the sort of teeth they have would indicate that they're meant to eat each other. This is foolish, because to eat each other would mean they would have to kill each other. And to kill each other would mean that would introduce, as I understand it, death into the world. And death, as I've been told, has not yet come into the world, which is a pity on some accounts. Pull through.
So I went away from him and sat on my favorite rock. This is where I go when I hunger for companionship. Someone to look at, someone to talk to. It is not enough, that lovely body painted there, but it is something, and something is better than utter loneliness. It talks when I talk. It is sad when I am sad. It comforts me with its sympathy. It says, "Do not be downhearted, you poor friendless girl. I will be your friend." It is a good friend to me, and my only one. It is my sister. That first time that she forsook me, I shall never forget that. Never, never. My heart was lead in my body. I said, she was all I had, and now she is gone. In my despair, I said, break my heart. I cannot bear my life anymore, and hid my face in my hands, and there was no solace for me. And when I took them away, after a little, there she was again, white and shining and beautiful.
She fell in the pond when she was looking at herself in it, which she's always doing.
And I sprang into her That was perfect happiness. I had known happiness before, but it was not like this, which was ecstasy. I never doubted her afterward. Sometimes she stayed away, maybe an hour, maybe almost the whole day, but I waited and I did not doubt. I said, she is busy or she has gone on a journey, but she will come. And it was so. She always did, and at night she would not come if it was dark, for she was a timid little thing. But if there was a moon, she would come. I am not afraid of the dark, but she is younger than I am. She was born after I was. Many and many are the visits I have paid her. She is my comfort and my refuge when my life is hard, and it is mainly that.
She nearly strangled when she fell in. Said it was most uncomfortable. Made her sorry for the creatures that live in there, which she calls fish. She continues to fasten names onto things which don't need them and don't come when they're called. That's of no consequence to her. She's such a numbskull anyway. So she got a lot of the fish out and brought them in here last night and put them in my bed to keep warm. But I've noticed them now and then all day. And I don't see that they're any happier there than they were before. Only quieter. When night comes, I shall throw them outdoors. I will not sleep with them again, for I find them clammy and unpleasant to lie among.
All the week I tagged around after him and tried to get acquainted. I had to do the talking because he was shy, but I didn't mind it. He seemed pleased to have me around, and I used the sociable we a good deal because it seemed to flatter him to be included.
She's littered the entire estate with execrable names and offensive signs. Whirlpool, cave, this way to Goat Island. She says this place would make a tidy summer resort if there were any custom for it. Summer resort? What is a summer resort? It's another invention of hers, just words without any meaning. But it's best not to ask her. She has such a rage for explaining. She's taken to beseeching me to stop going over the falls. What harm does it do? I've always done it. She says it makes her shudder. Why? I've always loved the plunge and the coolness. I thought that's what the falls were made for. They have no other use that I can see. She says they were only made for scenery, like the rhinoceros or the mastodon. I went over the falls in a tub. Not satisfactory to her. I went over in a barrel. Still not satisfactory. I swam the rapids and the whirlpool. Still not satisfactory to her. My life is too much hampered here. What I need is a change of scene.
I am full of sorrow. Yesterday he avoided me and seemed to wish I would not talk to him. I could not believe it and thought there was some mistake, for I loved to be with him and loved to hear him talk. And so how could it be that he could feel unkind toward me when I had not done anything? But at last it seemed true. So I went away and sat in the lonely place where I first saw him the morning that we were made. And I did not know what he was and was indifferent about him. But now it was a mournful place, and every little thing spoke of him, and my heart was very sore. I did not know why very clearly, for it was a new feeling. I had not experienced it before, and it was all a mystery, and I could not make it out. But when night came, I could not bear the lonesomeness any longer. So I went back to the shelter that he had built, and asked him how I could gain his forgiveness, and what I had done wrong. But he put me back out in the rain, and I am full of sorrow.
I escaped last Tuesday night. Traveled 2 days, built myself another shelter in a secluded part of the woods. I obliterated my tracks as best I could. But she's found me out. She hunted me down by way of a beast that she tamed and calls the wolf. And she came again, making that pitiful sound and shedding that water out of her places that she looks with. I was obliged to return with her again. I will emigrate presently when occasion offers. I caught her clodding apples out of that tree again. She said nobody was looking. She seems to use that as a sufficient justification for doing any dangerous thing. Told her that. The word justification moved her admiration for me. And envy, too, I think. It is a good word.
It is pleasant again, and I am happy. Those were heavy days. I do not think of them when I can help it. I tried to get him some of those apples, but I cannot reach them. I failed. But I think the good intention pleased him. They are forbidden, and he says I shall come to harm. But what should I care if I come to harm pleasing him? What should I care for that harm? He talks very little. Perhaps it is because he is not bright, and is sensitive about it and wishes to conceal it. It is such a pity that he should feel so, for brightness is nothing. It is in the heart that true value lies. I wish I could make him understand that a loving, good heart is riches, and that intellect without it is nothing. Although he talks so little, he has quite a considerable vocabulary. This morning he used quite surprisingly a good word. He evidently recognized himself, for he found a way to work it into the conversation 2 more times, casually. It was not good casual art. Still, it shows that he possesses a certain type of perception, which, without a doubt, is a seed that can be made to grow if cultivated.
She told me she was made from a rib that was taken from my body. This is at least doubtful, if not more than that. I haven't missed any rib.
I spent all morning making improvements to the property, hoping he would notice. I purposefully left him alone in hopes that he would come talk to me. But he did not come. At noon, I stopped for the day and took my recreation by flitting about with the bees and the butterflies and reveling in the flowers. Oh, those beautiful creatures that catch the smile of God out of the sky and preserve it. I gathered them and made them into wreaths and garlands and clothed myself in them while I ate my luncheon. Fruit, of course. Then I sat in the shade and wished and waited. But he did not come.
Perhaps I ought to remember that she's very young and make allowances. She's all eagerness, interest, vivacity. The world is to her a charm, a wonder, a mystery, a joy. She can't speak for delight when she finds a new flower. She must pet it and caress it and smell it and talk to it and pour out endearing names upon it. And she's color mad. Brown rocks, yellow sand, gray moss, green foliage, blue sky, the pearl of the dawn, the purple shadows on the mountains, the golden islands floating in crimson seas at sunset, the pallid moon sailing through the shredded cloud rack, the star jewels gathering in the waste of space. None of them is of any practical value as far as I can see, but because they have color and majesty, that's enough for her. She loses her mind over them.
He does not care for flowers. Call them rubbish. Cannot tell one from the other, and thinks it is superior to feel like that. He does not care for me. He does not care for the painted sky at eventide. Is there anything he does care for? Except building shacks to coop himself up in, and the good clean rain, and thumping the melons, and sampling the grapes, and fingering the fruit to see how his properties are coming along.
If she could quiet down and keep still for more than a couple of minutes at a time, it would be a reposeful spectacle. In that case, I think I could enjoy looking at her. Indeed, I'm sure I could, for I've come to realize that She's quite a remarkably comely creature. Lithe, slender, trim, rounded, shapely, nimble, graceful. And once, when she was lying marble white and sun-drenched, with her young head tilted back and her hand shading her eyes, watching the flight of a bird in the sky, I recognized that she was beautiful.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today, all without seeing him. It is a long time to be alone. Still, it is better than being unwelcome. By Friday, I had to have some company. I was made for it, I think. So I made friends with the animals. They are charming, and they just have the kindest disposition. They never look sour. They never let you feel like you were intruding. They just smile and wag their tail if they've got one. They are always ready for a romp or an excursion. I think they are perfect gentlemen. All these days we've had such good times, I don't think I felt lonesome at all.
If there's anything on the planet that she's not interested in, it's not on my list. There are animals that I'm indifferent to. Not so with her. She has no discrimination. She thinks everyone is a treasure. She welcomes every new one.
Lonesome? No, I should say not. Why, there's always a swarm of animals around, sometimes as much as 4 or 5 acres. You can't count them. We've made long excursions, and I have seen a great deal of the world. Almost all of it, I think. And so I am the first traveler, and the only one. When we are on a march, it is an imposing sight. There's nothing like it anywhere. For comfort, I ride the tiger or the leopard because it's soft and their rounded backs fit me, and because they are such pretty animals. But for long distance and for scenery, I ride the elephant. But he hoists me up with his trunk, and I can't really get down easily, so I have to slide down the back way. I have learned a number of things, and am educated now. But I wasn't at first. I was ignorant. At first it used to vex me, because with all my watching, I was never smart enough to be around when the water was running uphill. But now I do not mind it. I have experimented and experimented, and I know now that it never does run uphill, except in the dark. And I know it does in the dark, because otherwise the pool would go dry, which of course it never does. It is best to prove things by experiment. Then you know. Whereas if you depend on guessing and conjecturing and supposing, you never get educated. First I couldn't figure out what I was made for, but now I know it was to figure out the secrets of this world, and to thank the giver for it all, for devising it. I think there are so many things to learn. I mean, weeks and weeks worth. And by economizing and not hurrying too fast, I think I could learn them all. I hope so.
She's taken up with a snake now. The other animals are glad, because she was always experimenting with them and bothering them. And I'm glad because the snake talks, enables me to get a rest.
I saw him again for a moment last Monday at nightfall, but only for a moment. I was hoping he would praise me for trying to improve the estate, for I had meant well and had worked hard. But he was not pleased, and turned away and left me. But he was displeased with me on another account. I tried to implore him once more to stop going over the falls. But he would not listen to me. For the fire had revealed a new passion to me, quite different than love or grief or anything else I had felt. Fear. And it is horrible. It makes me shudder and shiver. But he has not discovered fear yet, so he could not understand me.
She says the snake has advised her to eat the fruit of that tree. She says the result will be a fine and noble and great education. I told her there would be another result as well. It would introduce death into the world. That was a mistake. I should have kept that remark to myself. I advised her to stay away from that tree. She said she won't. I foresee trouble. We'll emigrate.
Birds and animals are all friendly to each other. There are no disputes about anything. They all talk to me, but it must be a foreign language, for I cannot make out a word they say. They often understand me when I talk back, particularly the dog and the elephant. It makes me ashamed. I know that they are brighter than I am, for I want to be the principal experiment myself. And I intend to be.
I've had a variegated time. I escaped last night and rode a horse all night, as fast as he could go, in hopes that I could get clear of the park and hide out in some other country before the trouble should begin. But it was not to be. About an hour before sunup, as I was riding through a flowery plain where hundreds of animals were grazing or slumbering or playing with each other, as is their wont, they broke out in a frightful noise and tore at each other. And I knew what it meant. Eve had eaten that fruit, and death had come into the world. The tigers ate my horse, and they would have eaten me if I had stayed, which I didn't. But I exited with much haste. I found this place outside the park and was fairly comfortable for a few days. But she's found me out and named the place Tonawanda. Says it looks like that. In fact, I was not sorry she came, for there are but meager pickings here. And she brought some of those apples. I was obliged to eat them. I was so hungry. It was against my principles, but I find that principles have no real force, except when one is well fed. After she found me, she'd curtained herself in bunches of leaves. When I asked her what this nonsense was about, she tittered and blushed. I had never seen a person titter and blush before. And to me, it seemed unbecoming and idiotic. She said I would soon know how it was myself. This was correct. Hungry as I was, I laid down the apple half-eaten and arrayed myself in bunches of leaves as well. After this, we crept down to where the wild beast battle had been, and I ordered her to collect more skins and patch together more suits, proper for public occasions. They're uncomfortable, it's true, but stylish. And that is, after all, the main point about clothes. I find she is a good deal of a companion. I see that I should be lonesome and depressed without her. Well, now that I've lost my property. Oh, another thing, she says it's ordered that we work for our living hereafter. She will be useful. I will superintend. She accuses me of being the cause of our catastrophe. She says, with apparent sincerity and truthfulness, that the serpent assures her that the forbidden fruit is not apples, it's chestnuts. Well, I was innocent then, I told her, for I've not eaten any chestnuts. She says the serpent informed her that chestnut is a figurative term for an aged and moldy joke. I turned pale at that, for I've made many a joke to pass the weary time. Some of them may have been of that sort, although I honestly thought they were new when I made them. She asked me if I had made one right at the time of our catastrophe, and I was obliged to admit that I had, only to myself, not aloud. But it was this. I was pondering the great waterfall and thinking how wonderful it is to see the water tumble down there. when all of a sudden a radiant thought occurred to me, and it was this. It would be a good deal more wonderful to see it tumble up there. Oh, and I was just about to kill myself with laughter when all nature broke loose, and I had to flee for my life.
There. The serpent mentioned that very jest, and called it the first chestnut, and that it would be coeval with all creation.
Alas, I am to blame. Would that I were not witty. Oh, that that radiant thought had never occurred to me.
When I look back, the garden is a dream to me. It was beautiful, surpassingly beautiful, enchantingly beautiful, and now it is lost, and I shall not see it any more. The garden is lost, but I have found him, and am content. He loves me as well as he can, and I love him with all the strength of my passionate nature, and this, I think, is proper to my youth and sex. If I ask myself why I love him, I find that I do not know, and do not really care to know, as I think this kind of love is not the product of reasoning and statistic like one's love for birds and animals. I do love birds because of their song. I do not love Adam on account of his singing. I can't get used to it, reconciled to it. And yet I do ask him to sing. I wish to learn to like everything that he likes. And I am learning. At first I could not stand it, and now I can. Sours the milk. But I can get used to that kind of milk.
We have named it Cain. She caught it while I was up country trapping on the north shore of the Erie. Caught it in the timber a couple of miles from our dugout, or it might have been 4. She isn't certain which. It resembles us in some ways, and maybe a relation. That is what she thinks, but this is an error in my judgment. The difference in size warrants the conclusion that it is a different and new kind of animal. A fish, perhaps. Though when I put it in the water to see, it sank, and she plunged in and snatched it out before there was opportunity for the experiment to determine the matter. I still think it's a fish, but she's indifferent about what it is, and won't let me have it to try again. I don't understand this.
It is not on account of his brightness that I love him. No, it is not that. He is not to blame for his brightness, such as it is, for he did not make it himself. He is as God made him, and that is sufficient. There was wise purpose in that I know. In time it will develop, but I think it will not be soon. Besides, there is no hurry. He's well enough as he is.
The coming of the creature seems to have changed her whole nature and made her unreasonable about experiments. She thinks more of it than she does of any of the other animals, but she's not able to explain why. Her mind is disordered. Everything shows it. Sometimes she carries the fish in her arms half the night when it complains and wants to get to the water. At such times, the water comes out of the places in her face that she looks out of, and she pats the fish on the back and makes soft sounds with her mouth to soothe it, and betrays sorrow and solicitude in 100 ways. I've never seen her act like this with any of the other animals, and it troubles me greatly. She used to carry the young tigers around and play with them before we lost our property, but that was just play. She never took on about them like this when they were discontented with their dinner.
No, it is not on account of his gracious and considerate ways and his delicacy that I love him, for he has lacks in these regards. But he is well enough just as he is, and is improving.
She doesn't work Sundays, but lies around all tired out and likes to have the fish wallow over her She makes fool noises to amuse it, pretends to chew its paws, and that makes it laugh. I've not seen a fish before that could laugh. This makes me doubt. I have come to like Sunday myself. Superintending all the week tires a body so. There ought to be more Sundays. In the old days they were tough, but now they come handy.
It is not on account of his industry that I love him. No, it is not that. For I know he has it in him, but he conceals it from me. It is my only pain now. It grieves me and causes me sleepless nights, but I shall put it out of my mind and concentrate on my happiness, which is otherwise full and overflowing.
It isn't a fish. I can't quite make out what it is. It makes curious, devilish noises when it's not satisfied and says goo goo when it is. It is not one of us, for it doesn't walk. It is not a bird, for it doesn't fly. It is not a frog, for it doesn't hop. It is not a snake, for it doesn't crawl. I feel sure it's not a fish, though I cannot get a chance to find out whether it can swim or not. It merely lies around on its back all day. I've never seen another animal that does that before. I said I thought it was an enigma, and she merely admired the word without understanding it. In my judgment, it's either an enigma or some kind of a bug. If it dies, I'll take it apart, see what its arrangements are. I never had a thing perplex me so.
It is not on account of his education that I love him. No, it is not that. For he is self-educated and knows a multitude of things, but they are not so.
The perplexity augments instead of diminishes. I sleep but little. It has ceased from lying around and now goes about on its four legs. But unlike the other four-legged animals, it's different in that its front legs are unusually short. Consequently, this causes the main part of its person to stick up uncomfortably high in the air. And this is not attractive. It is built much as we are, but its method of traveling shows that it is not of our breed. The short front legs and long hind ones indicate that it is of the kangaroo family, but it is a marked variation of the species, since the true kangaroo hops, whereas this one never does. Still, it's a curious and interesting variety which has not been cataloged before. As I have discovered it, I felt justified in securing the credit for my discovery by attaching my name to it. Hence I have called it Kangarurum adamiensis. It must have been a young one when it first came, for it has grown exceedingly since. It is at least 5 times bigger now than it was then. And when discontented, it can make approximately 22 to 38 times as much noise. Coercion does not modify this. For this reason, I have discontinued the practice. She appeases it by persuasion and by giving it things which she had previously told me she wouldn't. As previously stated, I was not at home when she first found it. She told me she found it in the woods. It seems odd that it should be the only one, yet it must be so. For I've worn myself out these many weeks trying to find another one to add to my collection, and for this one to play with, for surely then it would be quieter and we could tame it more easily. But I find none, nor any vestige of any, and strangest of all, no tracks. It has to live on the ground, cannot help itself. Therefore, how does it go about without leaving a track? I've set a dozen traps, but they do no good. I catch all small animals except that one. Animals that merely go into the trap out of curiosity, I think, to see what the milk is there for. They never drink it.
It is not on account of his chivalry that I love him. No, it is not that. He told on me. I do not blame him. It is a peculiarity of his sex, I think, and he did not make his sex. I would never have told on him. I would have perished first. But that is a peculiarity of sex as well, and I do not take credit for it, because I did not make my sex.
The kangaroo continues to grow, which is strange and perplexing. I've never known one to take so long getting its growth. It has fur now, not like kangaroo fur, but fur on its head, which is exactly like our hair, except much finer and softer. And instead of being black, it's red. I'm like to lose my mind over the curious and harassing developments of this unclassifiable zoological freak. If I could catch another one. But that's hopeless. This is a new variety, that much is plain. I caught a true kangaroo and brought it in, thinking that this one, being lonesome, would rather have it for a companion than have no kin at all, or any animal it could feel a nearness to or get sympathy from. In its forlorn condition, it's here among strangers who do not know its ways or habits or what to do to make it feel like it's among friends. It was a mistake. It went into such fits at the sight of the kangaroo that I was convinced it had never seen one before. I pity the poor little noisy creature, and there's nothing I can do to make it happy. If I could tame it, but that's out of the question. The more I try, the worse it seems to get. It grieves me to the heart to see it in its little fits of sorrow and storms of passion. I wanted to let it go, but she wouldn't hear of it. That seemed cruel and unlike her, but perhaps she's right. It might be more lonesome than ever, for if I can't find another one, how could it?
Then why is it that I love him? Merely because he is masculine, I think.
It's not a kangaroo. No, for it holds onto her fingers and then goes a few steps on its hind legs and then falls down. It's probably a bear of some sort. Yet it has no tail, as of yet, and no fur, except on its head. And it keeps on growing. That's a curious circumstance, for bears get their growth much earlier than this. Bears are dangerous, since our catastrophe. And I shall not be satisfied to have this one prowling about much longer, not without a muzzle on. I offered to get her a kangaroo if she would let this one go. But it did no good. She's determined to run us into all sorts of risks. She was not like this before she lost her mind.
At bottom, he is good, and I love him for that. But I could love him without it. I know it. It's a peculiarity of sex, I think.
I've examined its mouth. There's no danger yet. It has only one tooth and no tail. It makes much more noise than it did when it was younger, and mainly at night. I've moved out, but I shall go over mornings at breakfast and see if it has more teeth. If it gets a mouthful of teeth, it will be time for it to go, tail or no tail. A bear does not need a tail to be dangerous.
He is strong and handsome, and I love him for that. And I admire him, and I am proud of him. But I could love him without it. If he were plain, I would still love him. If he were a wreck, I would still love him. And I would pray for him and work for him and watch over his bedside until I died.
I've been off hunting and fishing for a month in the region that she calls Buffalo. Why she calls it that, I don't know, unless perhaps because there are no buffaloes there. Meantime, the bear has learnt to paddle around on its hind legs, and it says Papa and Mama. It's certainly a new species. This resemblance to words may be purely accidental, of course, and may have no purpose or meaning. But even in that case, it's a thing which is still extraordinary because it's something that no other bear can do. This imitation of speech, taken together with its general absence of fur and entire absence of tail, certainly indicates that this is a new kind of bear. Further study of it will be extremely interesting. Meantime, I will go off on a far expedition to the forest of the north and make an exhaustive search. There must certainly be another one of its type somewhere, and this one will be less dangerous when it has one of its own. I will go straight away, but I'll muzzle this one first.
Yes, I think I love him merely because he is mine. There is no other reason. I think it is, as I first said, this kind of love is not the product of reasoning and statistics. It just comes. No one knows whence. It does not need to explain itself. It does not need to.
It has been a weary, weary hunt, and I've had no success. Meanwhile, without stirring from the home estate, she's caught another one. I'll never understand such luck. I could have searched these forests for 100 years and never found that. I've been comparing the two, and it's clear that they're the same breed. I was going to stuff one of them for my collection, but she rejected that idea, so I relinquished it. I think that's a mistake. It would be a great loss to science if these two were to get away. The old one is much tamer than it was. It can laugh and talk like a parrot, having learnt this, no doubt, from spending so much time around the parrot. It would astonish me if it were a new breed of parrot. Why it should astonish me, I don't know, because it has already been everything else I could think of since the early days when it was a fish. The new one is as ugly now as this one was in the beginning. It has the same raw meat and sulfur complexion that this one did, and the same singular head without any fur on it. She calls it Abel.
It is what I think. But I am only the first wife, the first who has examined such a matter, and it could be that in my ignorance and inexperience, I have not got it right.
They are boys, of course. We found it out long ago. It was their coming in that small, immature shape that puzzled us. We were not used to it. There are some girls now. Abel is a good boy. But if Cain had remained a bear, it might have improved him. After all these years, I see that I was mistaken about Eve. It's better to live outside of the garden with her than inside it without her. I thought she talked too much. But now I see that I should be sorry to have that voice fall silent and pass out of my life. Blessed is the chestnut that brought us together and taught me the sweetness of her spirit and the goodness of her heart.
It is my prayer, it is my longing that we may pass from this life together. A longing which shall never perish from the earth, but shall have a place in the heart of every wife that loves until the end of time, and it shall be called by my name. But if one of us must go first, it is my prayer that it shall be I. For he is strong, I am weak. I am not so necessary to him as he is to me. Life without him would not be life. How could I endure it? This prayer is also immortal, and will not cease from being offered up while my race continues. I am the first wife, and in the last wife, I shall be repeated.
wheresoever she was, there was Eden.